I will never forget the sound of her crying that night. It was the kind of shaking cry that made even the air around her door feel heavy. I was standing outside my own flat in Block 6, trying to get small breeze because NEPA had taken light again, when I heard it. At first, it sounded like somebody trying to swallow pain. Then it grew louder, like a secret finally escaping. I did not know who was inside crying like that, but something in the sound entered my chest and refused to leave. Hours before that moment, everything in the estate had been normal. Children were running up and down the corridor. The landlord's son was shouting at his friends to stop kicking ball near people's windows. And me, I was sitting outside with my small stool, enjoying the little quiet that comes just before night fully covers the place. The new widow, the woman everybody kept talking about, passed me earlier. She walked fast, head down, holding a nylon bag from the market. People in the estate said she felt too big to talk to anybody. They said she was proud. They said she was forming. But I had been watching her silently for weeks, and something about the way she moved always made me feel the opposite. Her steps looked like someone trying not to disturb ground. Her eyes were always on alert, like she expected something to jump out at her. She was not proud. She was scared. Not the normal scared, the deep kind that follows somebody everywhere. But that night, the trouble started with a small sound from her backyard. Her generator coughed, made one loud sputter, then died completely. The estate was already in darkness, so when her own light went off too, everything around her flat became black like bottom of pot. She came outside with a torch in her hand. Even the light was shaking because her hand was shaking. I watched her bend beside the generator. I watched her try to start it again and again until her hand grew tired. She did not cry for help. She did not call anybody. She just knelt there like she was begging the machine. I stood up slowly. I did not want her to think I was trying to disturb her. That was when I heard the small knocking from inside her flat. It was very soft but clear. It sounded like someone touching the door from the wrong side, like someone scared of their own house. She heard it too. Her whole body stiffened. Her torch almost fell from her hand. Something told me to go to her, something heavier than worry. So I walked towards her small backyard and called her name. That was when she turned, and I saw fear sit inside her eyes like it had lived there for years. Before she even answered me, before I could help her touch the generator, before she even said one word about her life, I knew one thing for sure. The widow on Block 6 was breaking down long before anybody in that estate noticed. And that night was the beginning of the truth that would change everything for both of us. When I stepped into her backyard that night, the first thing I noticed was how she pulled herself back, like someone expecting a blow. Her torchlight rested on my face, and I saw her trying to breathe small, so she would not look afraid. She greeted me softly, her voice tiny like she did not use it often. I told her I heard her generator stop and wanted to check it for her. She stepped aside slowly, giving space but still watching me with those careful eyes that spoke more than her mouth ever did. I bent beside the generator and started checking the plug, the choke, the fuel level. It was nothing serious, just a blocked fuel line, something I could fix in minutes. But while my hands worked, my mind stayed on the sound I heard earlier from her door, a tiny knock from the wrong side, a sound someone makes when they do not trust even their own room. She stood behind me, rubbing her hands together like she was cold, even though the night was hot. I asked her to hold the light steady. When she stretched her hand forward, the wrapper on her wrist shifted, and I saw a long, old scar. Not small, not accident scar, the type that comes from something that should not have happened to anybody. She quickly pulled her wrapper back down, but it was too late. My eyes had already seen the truth hiding there. I asked gently if everything was okay. She nodded fast, too fast, like someone trying to block water from escaping a pot already boiling. She tried to change the topic by asking if her generator would work again before morning. I told her it would work in a few minutes. She nodded again, still rubbing her hands. Just then, two estate women passed the corridor beside her flat. They were talking loudly as usual. When they saw us, their voices went higher. They said the widow had finally left her pride and come out for help. They laughed like it was funny. She froze. Her torchlight dropped a little. her shoulders folded in like someone shrinking. It was the first time I saw her look truly hurt. I turned to the women and told them to mind their business. Maybe my voice was harder than usual because they stopped talking and walked away with long faces. But the damage had already reached her. She stepped back quickly and whispered something like she was sorry for disturbing me. She was not disturbing anybody. She was scared of the noise the world made whenever it noticed her. I finished fixing the generator and pulled the rope. It started at once. The whole backyard lit up with the sound. She looked at it like the machine was the only thing in the world she could trust. Then she thanked me in that small voice again and began to walk back to her door. But when she reached the door, she hesitated. She held the key in her hand, staring at the lock like it was a person. Her body tightened, the same way someone tightens before entering a room filled with bad memories. She touched the lock slowly, then pushed the door open and slipped inside quickly as if entering before something could catch her. I stood there for a while, confused and thinking. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong long before she came to Block 6. And as I walked back to my own flat, I knew one thing. This woman was not hiding because she felt too big. She was hiding because the world she came from had taught her to fear everything, even the sound of her own door. The next morning, the estate woke up the same way it always did. Children running around with buckets, people shouting at Nipa for not bringing light, traders pushing wheelbarrows through the narrow path. But inside Block 6, inside that small stretch of corridor between my flat and hers, something felt different. The air was too quiet, like somebody had pressed pause on one part of the building. Her door stayed shut. Not even a sound of movement came from inside. I stood outside sweeping the corridor when I heard Mrs. Adefemi from upstairs say that the widow did not come out to fetch water. She always came out early, carried her small keg, and rushed back inside before anybody could talk to her. But that morning she did not. The estate gossip group started forming slowly. They whispered that maybe she was angry because of what happened the night before. Some said she was pretending to be gentle so people would pity her. Some said she was sick. Everybody had something to say except the truth. I wanted to knock on her door, but something stopped me. I did not want her to think I was trying to cross her boundary. Instead, I listened. I listened for any small sound, a cough, a footstep, anything, but nothing came out. It was like an empty house. When evening came, I sat outside again. The sun was going down. Small breeze was blowing. Children were now inside. The estate was quiet. That was when I saw her door move. Not open, just move a little. It was the kind of movement somebody makes when they want to check if the world outside is safe. Her hand appeared first, then her head slowly came out. She looked around like a person who did not want to be seen. When she saw me, she almost went back inside, but I greeted her calmly. She nodded and stepped out halfway. Her wrapper was tied carelessly, like she had been indoors all day. Her eyes were red. Not because she cried now, but because she had been crying a long time before coming out. I asked if she was fine. She said she was. The words did not match her face. She asked if the estate people were still talking about her. I told her not to worry about them, but I knew she already was. Her whole body showed it. She stood there like someone waiting to hear if danger had passed. After a long silence, she said something that made me stand still. She said she did not sleep well because every small sound inside her house reminded her of her old house. She said the knocking I heard on her door the night before was not anybody. It was only her hand shaking. She said sometimes she touches her door to check if the lock is strong enough, even when she knows it is. Something in her voice made me look at her properly. This woman was fighting a battle nobody could see. A battle she carried everywhere. A battle that followed her into her dreams. She sat on the small bench near her door. I did not move closer. I just sat on my own stool and waited for her to talk at her own pace. She told me she used to be locked inside for days in her old house. She said she would hear footsteps and pray the person would not open the door. She said her husband's anger was like Harmattan fire. Once it started, everything around would burn. She spoke quietly, like she was telling a secret to a wall, not to a human being. When she finished talking, she held her wrapper tight, like she was afraid the past would snatch her. I wanted to tell her she was safe here, but I knew safety was not something she could believe just because someone said it. Safety was something she would need time to feel. She stood up slowly and said she would go inside. But before she entered, she looked back at me and asked if I could please check her generator again later. Not because it was bad, but because she was scared of being in the dark when the estate got quiet. I told her I would. She nodded, entered, and gently closed the door. This time, the door did not sound like a cage closing. It sounded like someone trying to trust the world again, one small step at a time. The following week felt like the estate was slowly learning a new rhythm. People still talked, children still shouted, the landlord still complained about bills nobody wanted to pay, but something softer started growing around Block 6. The widow came out more often, not for long, not with full confidence, but she stepped outside at least once each day, sometimes only to sweep a little part of her front door, sometimes to hang small clothes on the line. Every movement was careful, like someone learning how to walk again after many years of sitting. I noticed the way she looked at people who passed. Her eyes always searched their faces as if trying to guess their thoughts before they spoke. And anytime two women stood together talking and laughing, she would quietly step back inside her house. Not because they were talking about her, but because she did not trust groups of people. She was used to being judged before she even opened her mouth. One evening, as the sun dropped behind the estate fence, she came outside with a small plastic chair. She placed it near her door and sat down. That was the first time I saw her sit outside without rushing back inside. I was surprised, but I kept quiet so I would not make her uncomfortable. I was repairing my old standing fan when she cleared her throat softly, like she wanted to say something but was not sure how it would sound. She asked if the generator check I promised on the previous night was still possible. I said yes and walked over with my small toolbox. Her generator was fine, but I opened it and started checking small things to make her feel safe. She stood beside me, not too close, but close enough to show she trusted me a little. While I worked, she asked a question that told me how much she had been thinking. She asked why I did not join the others to talk about her. She said she noticed I never laughed when people said she was proud. I told her I did not believe what I heard. I told her fear has a way of wearing the clothes of pride, and anybody who looks closely can see the difference. She looked at me long enough for me to see tears forming, not the heavy type from sadness, the quiet type that comes from relief. She wiped her face quickly and said she was not used to kindness. She said in her old house, help always came with a price. Someone would do something for her and later use it to control her. So when she came to Block 6, her first plan was to stay invisible. Just then, Mr. Ibrahim, the estate electrician, passed and greeted us. He asked if her light was working well. She nodded shyly. He smiled and said if she ever needed anything, she should call him. She froze for a second, like she was trying to decide if the offer was real or pretend. When he left, she asked if people in this estate were always like this. I told her not everyone, but enough people to make the place feel like home if she allowed it. Later, as I started the generator for her, she surprised me again. She said she wanted to try sitting outside for longer, maybe even talk to one or two neighbors. She said she did not want to be the shadow at the end of Block 6 anymore. She said she wanted to try, even if her hands still shook sometimes. I watched her sit on her small chair, her face lit by the soft glow from her bulb. Her posture was still careful, but something in her shoulders had relaxed. For the first time since she came to the estate, she looked like someone who wanted to be part of the world again. As the night breeze blew gently across the corridor, she looked at me and said she hoped the next day would be better than the last. I nodded, knowing that healing does not come in one night. It comes in small steps, small breaths, small moments where someone chooses to stay outside instead of hiding inside. And that night, she chose to stay outside longer than she ever had. The night everything changed began like a normal evening in the estate. Children were chasing each other with torn kites. Women were discussing the rising cost of tomatoes, and the landlord was shouting again about water bills that nobody wanted to pay. I was sitting outside cleaning my radio, when I noticed her door open slowly. She stepped out, wearing a simple gown and holding a small bowl of groundnuts. That was the first time I saw her bring something outside to share. It looked like a little thing, but for her, it was a mountain. She sat on her usual plastic chair near her door. Her eyes still carried caution, but not fear. That night, she looked like someone trying to live, not just survive. As I greeted her, I saw something new. A small smile, the kind that grows by accident. I decided to sit near her on my stool. We did not talk at first. We just watched the estate move around us. After a while, 2 children passed and greeted her with loud voices. For the first time, she smiled properly at them and gave them some groundnuts. The children ran off laughing. She watched them go with a look I had never seen on her face before. It was the look of someone remembering they used to be human before life turned them into stone. Then it happened. A loud argument broke out near the junction. 2 men were fighting over parking space, shouting and knocking things down. The noise was sharp and sudden. Before I could even stand, she jumped to her feet, eyes wide, hands shaking. Her whole body reacted like she had returned to her old life in 1 second. She pressed her back to the wall, breathing fast, her wrapper trembling against her legs. I moved closer slowly, telling her it was just an argument, nothing more. But fear had taken over completely. She covered her ears with both hands and kept whispering that she did not want to go back. She kept saying she did not want to be locked inside again. Her voice cracked in a way that made my chest tighten. Just then, the noise at the junction stopped. The men walked away, still grumbling, but the danger had passed. The estate returned to normal, but she did not. Her breath was still heavy, her hands still shaking. I guided her gently to sit back on her chair. She sat, holding her bowl tightly like it was the only thing keeping her steady. After some minutes, she looked at me and said she thought she had healed more than she actually had. She said she truly wanted to be free, but her past still held her like a rope tied around her chest. I told her healing was not straight. It goes forward, then backward, then forward again. I told her it was normal to shake sometimes. She looked at the ground and said she did not want the estate to see her as a weak person. I told her the estate already saw her bravery. Only strong people rebuild themselves after being broken for years. She kept quiet, but her breathing slowed. The tightness in her shoulders softened. Then, something unexpected happened. Mrs. Adefemi came downstairs holding a small flask of hot tea. She walked straight to the widow and placed the tea in her hand without saying one unnecessary word. Soon after, Mr. Ibrahim appeared with a new bulb, saying the one at her door looked too dim. A few minutes later, 2 children returned to say goodnight. One by one, people came. Not to pity her, not to stare, just to show she was not alone. No crowd, no noise, only gentle steps and quiet care. For a woman who had been invisible for months, it was like watching a wall crack open to let in light for the first time. By the time the estate fell quiet, she had finished her tea and was sitting more calmly. Her eyes were soft. She said the estate felt different that night. She said she could finally breathe without expecting something terrible to happen. She said she felt at home for the first time since she moved in. When she stood to go inside, she left her door open a little while she arranged her things. Not shut, not locked, just open. It was a small space, but a big step. I watched her disappear into the warm light of her room, and as her door finally closed gently, not fearfully, I knew something had shifted for good. The widow on Block 6 was not hiding anymore. She was slowly returning to herself, and this time she was not doing it alone.